Howdy folks, Hoss Bossman here with a 2-hour long clip from my podcast Bridgie, which is available on all major podcasting apps. This episode is about Tom T. Hall, a musical hero of mine, and appropriately, it is with Mr. Chris Crofton, another musical hero of mine. Might I dare say a friend? Definitely a friend of Bridgie, the podcast this is from. I know I haven't done a video essay in a while, but I am going to do a video essay about Tom T. Hall's political music soon. I've got it in the works. If you've never heard Tom T. Hall's music, I'm including a link to a playlist I made that I think is a good starter set. And now, without any further ado, here is me and Mr. Chris Crofton chewing the cud as we remember Mr. Tom T. Hall, a life well lived. Mwah.
What is this immersive view? Are we in a bathroom?
That's like that movie with Scarlett Johansson that fucking sucked.
What movie was that?
Where she pulled people into that like black soup. Did you see that movie? It was like an art movie. I mean, it was like, it was supposed to be like an important movie because it was weird.
Is it like she's like an alien in it?
Yes.
Okay, I haven't seen that, but yeah, I've heard it's supposed to be real amazing, but you beg to different?
Well, it's fucking, I mean, it's amazing on purpose. You know what I mean? It's one of those movies where it's like, I don't know, it's like a very self-important movie in a way. And it's not really very, I mean, I guess it's kind of like a horror movie, but it's not scary. It's supposed to be psychologically scary, but it's really not that scary. Plus, I think Scarlett Johansson's from like the town next to mine in Connecticut. She's she's just a rich kid. Yeah. I mean, she's just another one of these fucking elevated rich kids. I mean, she would have had a good life even if she wasn't a fucking big movie star, she's just annoying because it's like, fucking Chloe 70s from Darien, Connecticut, same town. They all come from the same place. They're not like self-made. They're not, their stories aren't interesting. They're just like hot people from rich neighborhoods that fucking got even more perks. That's my view of it.
It's certainly
very cynical view of it because that's the way fucking movie stars have been for most of history, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, Scarlett Johansson definitely comes off as a, like in interviews and stuff, as a very like privileged person. And obviously she's been privileged for a long time, but like, she seems to be kind of in her DNA, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, and I don't mean to pick out the women, but we're talking about Scarlett Johansson, but I mean, like I found out, Nick Kroll, who Nick Kroll is? Mm-hmm. His dad's a billionaire with a B.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like these people are very often cut from the same network of people. They're very rarely somebody who just is self-made. I mean, there certainly are, but there are many more people that would have had an amazing life already, or at least a super easy life. And then on top of it, that wasn't enough for them. They wanted the fame also. So
yeah, some of these like weirdos who have like Tucker Carlson is like the heir to some like a frozen food.
Yeah, I went to college with Tucker Carlson. You must have heard me talk about that. Yeah, I mean, he was in my class, and I interacted with him, and my whole college, Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, was kids that got put in that school by pulling strings. They're all named something the third. They all wore gold signet rings. They all did no work, and they all became senators. I mean, it really, I've seen, that's the thing is you grow up in like New Canaan, Connecticut, even though we were sort of not zillionaires like most of the people in that town. So I felt like an outsider, even though we were kind of financially fine, but we were made to feel like we were poor in that town. Mm-hmm. So I had like an outsider perspective on that part of the country. If you're inside, then you just are like, oh, this is great. And I guess I'll just work for a hedge fund and everything will be good. And, you kind of maybe would go with the flow, but I was sort of forced to feel like an outsider and be bullied by these people because we just were kind of like middle class as opposed to zillionaires. But I got to see these people. I got to watch whether they did anything to earn their spots, and they don't. They don't. In fact, there's a whole system set up to allow them to get to the top without doing anything. So the idea that there's no white privilege is just such a laughable. I mean, there's not just white privilege. It's like understated how much privilege white people have. I mean, white people are ushered to the top, and black people, people of color, just do not have access to that system, except for the rare outlier if you're happen to be an old money person of color, which, barely any exist. I mean, how would you fucking manage to, in the old system, it was set up so you couldn't have any wealth, like by law. So, it's just, anyway, we're just, that's why we have the Congress we have and the Senate we have. This is all a result of white privilege, of people who aren't qualified being helped ahead. And then you end up with people who have no qualifications at all, doing everything, and they're completely insecure because they know that secretly, so they're angry, they're vengeful toward people who actually have to work because it makes them feel uncomfortable because they know they didn't get their shit the right way. It's fucking crazy, and we're just seeing it all now. I mean, this is not new, but it's just like the pandemic especially has made everybody really flex their white privilege, like so much so that they're like, I'm so white that pandemics don't apply to me. I mean, you're really seeing this result of like these kids who didn't do any homework growing up into adults and still being like, mommy, they're trying to make me wear a mask. It's fucked up.
Yeah. I mean,
it's fucking
absurd.
I'm in a bad mood, because of like just the news, I don't know how to get out from under this in a way. Yeah. And also just being alone for so long, like sort of like, I don't know how to re-engage society because society has not sort of started up again. So it's like, I don't know exactly what to do. I don't know maybe I'm like having a bad couple of days, but I'm not exactly sure how to resume life in a way that is fun. I'm not sure, I mean, and then being on podcasts a lot like that kind of, I think, probably makes life seem weird too, because you know what I mean? Like it is like virtual. It's virtual. I can't say it. It's virtual.
Well,
I'm going to take a stand here. I'm going to take a stand here and say it's fucking virtual.
It's so true.
You know what I mean? I'm tired of people dancing around it. It's fucking virtual. Let's face it.
I mean, I started teaching again like 3 weeks ago. And, if you ask me, school shouldn't be in session because, there still is a pandemic going on. But, this area that we're in is there have been, since the school year started, there have already been 2 students in this 3 weeks ago. We're coming up on the end of the 3rd week, and 2 of the students in this one school system have already died from gunshot wounds.
Oh, what?
Yeah, it's
what? Why?
Well, it's pretty high crime, high poverty area we're in, and
where are you in again? Outside Georgia or outside Atlanta? I mean,
yeah. Well, about 3 south of Atlanta in Georgia. Mm-hmm. I should probably edit that out because I try to keep, even though they can totally fucking find it. Like I try to keep my teaching and podcasting and advocating for the abolition of capitalism and whatnot somewhat separate, but even though I still advocate for the abolition of capitalism to my students, but I try to keep it a little more low key than I do on the podcast and whatnot. But
I would imagine, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, in the current climate, I would imagine that makes sense.
Well, I mean,
so that's crazy though. I'm sorry to hear that. That's fucking I don't know. Yeah, it's like, how does that make you feel? Like, does that make you feel like, how do you move forward. Like, I feel like sometimes the way you have to move forward now is like either you wall off your feelings or you feel them and then you can't function in some ways. You know what I mean? Like, so you got to force yourself to be like, well, I just got to keep going, you know, but it's really, that's stunning and awful.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know either of the, you know, I've only been living here for a few months and only been teaching in this school system for like 3 weeks. But you know, I didn't know either of the kids, but it, you know, since the starting school back with the pandemic, I mean, it's awful in so many ways, as you can imagine, like trying to get high schoolers to like keep their masks on right and walk the right direction down the one directional hallways and all that stuff is like pretty difficult. And you know, it's hard to like make class fun and engaging and stuff in that kind of environment. But you know, that's one reason that like school, it was pretty much like, you know, school has to be back in session is because like, you know, these kids have been out for the past year and a half and like it's already a pretty rough area. And, you know, like when they don't have school to have be a distraction to them, at least for part of the day, it's like they've been getting into like a lot more trouble recently, or, you know, since the pandemic started. Cause it's like, you know, while most people, you know, staying home means like, you know, staying inside, it's like, you know, these are kids whose parents, a lot of them are parents are never home and stuff. So they're just like still out and about. A lot of them, you know, the ones who would have been anyway. And so, you know, that's one reason that the administration and everybody's all like, you know, we're trying to do everything in our power to keep from having to go virtual again, because it's like, this is, you know, one of the only things that like keeps the kids out of trouble for some part of the day. It's and the tensions and everything. And, you know, the economic problems that have just been exacerbated by the pandemic and stuff, like has not made any of these issues, as you can imagine, has not made any of them any better. So yeah, it's people, you know, I feel like, you know, that is even like kind of a place of privilege. Like some, I'll see some people on, you know, some like leftists on YouTube or whatever, like saying like, what the fuck, why is school back in session now? And it's like, for most parts of the country, I totally get that. Like school shouldn't be back in session. And, you know, maybe it shouldn't be here either, but it's like, you know, when that's the kind of like situation that this community is in, it's kind of like, you know, I don't think that's something that would really occur to most people to think that like, you know, being in school keeps some of these kids to some degree anyway, out of like immediate, like, you know, mortal danger.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think that part of my problem is that I'm not doing anything. I'm not like I have a work situation where I don't have to work very much really. And it's actually probably, you know, I think it's been too long. I need to be engaged in, even if it is a stressful activity like you're going through. It's like, I think I'm, you know, after all that isolation, I kind of am like, maybe I like isolation, but I think I've been too isolated for too long. So, I mean, I think maybe I'm getting because I've spent so much time by myself, I'm getting a false, you know, like I think probably being engaged with this stuff rather than just reading about it probably feels better in a way, because you feel like you can make a difference, or, you know, you're still just around people, because this has to be going forward. We can't just all live in our houses. We have to see each other and stuff. I don't know. It's just a weird time. So I actually feel like probably, yeah. And of course I understand for kids that they should be in school, you know, I mean, to some, you know, I don't just think, oh yeah, we can just keep kids out of school forever. I mean, kids are already enough living in their damn iPads without, I mean, just imagine these kids will merge as adults and be just like terrified. I was terrified, and I was socialized, you know, correctly. Well, not correctly, you know, at all, but
more or less,
not even really close. But I mean, like I did like live in society with uninterrupted, and I still, when I got turned loose in the actual world, immediately fell apart. So like, yeah, you gotta have some real world experience And yeah, I think so. My perspective on this might be a little darker than just because I'm fucking too inside. I've been too inside.
I mean, I really am year round kind of a, naturally just an indoorsy type. And, when the pandemic hit, it was kind of like, oh, now everybody's more like me, just like, kind of a homebody. But it took a little while, but I definitely hit the point of being like, okay, that's enough of this. I really want to get back to at least having the option to like go out and, live normally again.
Yeah.
Can you hold on just 1 second?
Yep.
That's okay. Sorry. Anyway.
No, it's fine.
So
yeah, this actually ties into Tom T. Hall.
Sure. Yeah. That's I should do. I might record like a little bit of an intro for this, but
you can do one now if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get to where, especially since I started working full time again, like I'm trying to like get to where I can just sort of let the episodes be as they are without like editing them or diving back into them too much. So don't like threaten to kill the president or anything like that, because I don't know if I'll be able to have time to edit it out, but just hypothetically. So I think I'm gonna try to make this like more of a raw episode, and
well, I've been doing my show live, like on Twitch. So that's fucking, I mean, you can't fucking take anything back.
Yeah, that's kind of like that sort of like puts you in a position to where that's your only option is to just like do it, publish it the way that it was. So I think I might start doing that.
I've always kind of done unedited stuff. We're doing more editing now than we ever did. Just because Eric, our engineer, can do that. We just didn't have in the past, we really didn't have anybody who just wanted to do it. We didn't really know how to do it. I hate learning stuff like that. And, so we just ended up doing unedited stuff forever. So yeah, I'm used to it. And I used to have a live radio show too. So we had to be very careful, about what we said. And I'm fine with you using it raw or whatever. It sounds
okay.
Fucked up. So yeah, you can just cut what we just talked about if you want and just do an intro now. We can talk about Tom T. Hall.
Well, I mean, maybe it would be a fun to go in media res or whatever.
Whatever you want to do. So far, I stand behind. I this is the other thing is you do have to, since everything is virtual, as I've already blown everybody's mind by saying, by revealing that. You really don't have a lot of, you can't like read body language. You have to you really have to be kind of, it's a new way of talking in a way. You have to like make sure that you, I don't know. It's not an easy place to really make art because you kind of have to be paranoid because if you misspeak or, you really can't, then you scramble. You immediately go, oh my God, someone's going to take that this way or whatever. So I talked about it yesterday on our live show, Cold Brew Got Me Like, which is every Wednesday on Twitch at 6:30 Pacific. I
didn't catch it live yesterday, but I'm I listen to every episode.
Oh, cool. Episode, Greg was good. Greg
I love it, man.
Thanks. I'm excited about it. And Greg was on vacation, so I was by myself yesterday, which is
right on.
Fucking, I just have to rant and rave, So ranting and raving. I don't even remember what I'm talking about now. Oh, I was talking about if you had like a chat room, like if Van Gogh had a chat room going while he was like trying to make a painting, there would have ended up it would have been a dogs playing cards by the time people got done chiming in. You know what I mean? Making art while people are like in real time telling you you're a piece of shit is not the best conditions.
Yeah. Or
I mean, you should not have a public referendum on everything you do. It makes you very self-conscious and less likely to do anything very new. Let's put it that way.
I mean, I maybe like being an artist type wasn't the best thing, or really, like being a teacher, even like being such a sensitive person. I've really had to train myself to like not take things to heart, like record reviews and stuff like that, because sensitive in that very like straightforward sense of, not just being like somewhat like emotional person and whatnot, but like also just being like, I take it personally no matter what. And man, teaching high school, the kids, there's no filter at all, and they will just like make you feel horrible about yourself. So you really got to put up the guard.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Getting through this is like getting through internet life for someone who's like really sensitive or just really nice and really takes things personally. I mean, it's impossible to do art practically right now. I mean, everything has to be promoted through these things. I mean, so you have to like, if you want to have a successful photography business or whatever, you pretty much have to put your shit up, I mean, you don't have to, but unless you're already successful, that's how people are going to find out about your shit. And that's opening you up to someone right away saying, these pictures suck. You know what I mean? And that for some people would be enough to say, all right, I'm just going to quit. I mean, I know people who are like that, who just are, because they're like, I don't do that to other people. So how did that happen to me? Like people who really kind of really want their life to go in a way where that kind of exchange never happens, and in real life, they've been nice enough and humane enough that doesn't happen to them. And then they do something online and immediately people call them stupid fucks. And they're just like, well, I'm done then, because some people just really don't want to hear that kind of shit, and so you get these sociopaths succeeding in art now because they can look at people calling them, cunt faced losers or whatever for fucking all day long. And they're like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, that's not the normal, that's a sociopathic person. Like, to be Joe Rogan, to be the most popular podcaster in the world, you have to be able to tune out so much hate.
Sure. Yeah.
That makes you probably not a normal person, because if you can ignore that much hate, then you probably are a sociopath.
I mean, there's just so much like weird, intense hate that comes at you as, it's like it'll come at anybody, but like, especially
it's recreational a lot of the time. I mean, the people don't even mean it. They're just like, fuck you for fun.
if you ever actually like go back at them and like approach them like a human being and actually just like say something like, dude, are you okay? They'll be like, no, I'm just having a bad day or whatever. Like, very rarely do they really double down if you actually like try to engage with them a little bit, or like, a lot of times, especially if they're like commenting on something that you made, like, I'll post a video essay I make or a song I put up or something like that. And like, somebody will be like, oh, who is this fucking weirdo? And then I'll like say something like, hey, that's kind of harsh, man. And they'll be like, oh shit, I didn't know you were going to see this. And, it's like you said, it is a recreational, and just like they're, it's kind of like a version of like road rage or something, where it's like, you feel like when you're in your car, you're like, you have this false sense of being completely isolated, and you are in a sense, but like, being in a car makes you feel like you're in your own little world that you like control, when that's very much in many ways not the case.
Yeah, that's a Louis C.K. bit where he talks about the things you do in your car, or the thing like versus what you would do in an elevator.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just took a bite of a fucking, what do you call it? Granola bar. So I don't remember what I was talking about. So
we can, I guess, come back to it if it comes to mind. But let's, I guess, go ahead and start talking about Tom T. Hall. I mean, we did start off like just kind of talking about wealth inequality and some poverty issues and whatnot. And I think that's like, I have so much, like, I don't know where to begin talking about like my relationship with Tom T. Hall's music. I'd like to hear, whatever your background with it, how you got into it and whatnot. I mean, my dad was is a big country music fan. He's a 74-year-old white guy from the country. So, he loves country music, obviously. And, he, growing up, he drove a like 78 Thunderbird when I was a kid that had an 8-track player in it, which is still, I think, like a little bit too new for a car to have like an 8-track player in it, but
Right.
it was like at the tail end of 8-track players being in cars, I think. So it was 78 Thunderbird.
I had a car with an 8-track player, and my parents had a car with an 8-track player.
They're fun. I mean, they're shitty, but
if you like the middle of songs all the time.
Yes. Yeah, they're really not functional.
They don't work very well.
Yeah.
I love when people, if you go to like a fucking thrift store and you see people who made mixes on 8-tracks, like I think that's the craziest shit ever. That's like the most deep cut old time shit, like making mixes on fucking 8-track.
Seems untenable.
So did your dad have a Tom T. Hall?
Yeah.
Did he have a bunch did he have his records, or did he have his greatest hits?
He had I think he had a whatever the album that Don't Forget the Coffee Billy Joe is on. I can't remember what the name of that one is, but he had a couple, I think one like a greatest hits and a handful of other country artists, mostly ones from the 60s and 70s. And the way that I was introduced to actually like the first stand-up comedy I ever heard was in that 8-track player was Steve Martin, Wild and Crazy Guy, which is obviously a classic.
Yeah, I just remembered I'm like the same age as your dad, probably. So yeah, I had a Wild and Crazy Guy album when I think I was like in 5th grade though, or 6th.
Well, yeah, I know you would have had it as a kid. My dad is 74. I don't think.
Oh yeah, okay. I'm not in 74.
That.
I'm not 74. I mean, I'm edgy. I'm going to be there in just a minute, but I'm 52.
Well, so yeah, I mean, he he had there was Steve Martin and Tom T. Hall were pretty much the main two. There was a Conway Twitty one we listened to quite a bit too, but I remember the Tom T. Hall one had Don't Forget the Coffee Billy Joe. And the first song that I remember really loving of his, one of the first songs I ever remember like just loving and wanting to hear over and over again was this one called The Man Who Hated Freckles.
Oh shit!
You ever hear that one?
No, I don't know that one.
It's a deep cut for sure because
my way into Tom T. Hall was the greatest hits, the one with the plaque on the cover, like the one with that, like it's got like trees and some sort of like outdoor scene, and there's a plaque. I forget what the plaque is, but I got that on vinyl. And I used to just play it on my radio show, and that was how I got into him. But anyway, go ahead. I just was interested. I don't know every song of his. I mean, I don't know if anyone does because he's written, I think, probably 1,000 songs. But
yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I don't know about the Freckle one. Go ahead.
He, I think there's a lot of deep cuts with him, and I definitely don't know like every song. I have a pretty big, collection of his music that I just gathered over the years in like my iTunes. And there's I think the Man Who Hated Freckles one is like definitely a deep cut. Like it's not in any of the albums that I have. Like the only time I ever knew of it was on that one 8-track my dad had. And then like finally, very, very recently, I found it. Somebody put it up on YouTube. So it is like available online. Everybody should check it out. I remember when I had David Griscom on the show talking about like country music and stuff. Are you familiar with him? He was like one of the guys on the Michael Brooks show. And now he and that Matt.
Oh, yeah. Is he on Sam Cedar?
I don't know if he goes on Sam Cedar's show that much, but Matt Leck from Sam Cedar's show and him have a newer podcast called Left Reckoning that they were like kind of the dudes on Michael Brooks' show. And then, when Michael Brooks passed away, they, after a little while, started their thing together. And so he, David Griscom, he's from Texas and just like a big country music fan, leftist. And one of the things he does on this Ben Burgess's show, he'll do this segment called Outlaws and Revolutionaries, where he talks about like country singers and folk singers and like Americana folks who like are have like these sort of radical politics that they talk about in their songs.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I had him on, the first thing that came to mind for me was Tom T. Hall, because that's one thing that I think stands out about him. And I mentioned that song, "The Man Who Hated Freckles," and he just like laughed when he heard that title, because he was like, "God, that's such a Tom T. Hall song title."
Yeah.
And that like a fable almost. But the premise of that song is that it's a very like kind of goofy thing, but the premise is, it's about racism, and it's just like, using the concept of a man who hates freckles as being just like this absurd, ridiculous thing, just like, judging people for their skin color, basically. And that was such an awesome song, especially as a kid, just this very good, like straightforward message, but very playful. And the idea of being an anti-racist, like pretty explicitly like anti-racism, pro civil rights song that came out in, would have been not even a decade after the civil rights movement, it's like, or the Civil Rights Act, I guess, like, early 70s that song came out. And that was kind of late 60s into the 70s was Tom T. Hall's like heyday, or I don't know if you call it its peak, but definitely like when he really made his name in the
I don't really know what his I don't really know his story as much as, I mean, he was one of those guys that, was sort of under the radar in a strange way. I mean, like, he's just a low key guy. He didn't really, he didn't wear crazy outfits or anything. He didn't really reveal a whole lot about, he revealed a lot about himself, like in his songs, I think, but and certainly his like worldview or his, but he didn't like publicly. I don't remember seeing him being interviewed a lot when I was, because I was like the right age where he would have been on like, I don't know, whatever show was on, like variety shows he used to be on in the 70s and the 80s, and or even like Johnny Carson or whatever. He was just not a big public figure, even though he's written more songs than some other people who were big public figures by a long shot. I mean, he's written so many good songs, and there's these more public and show-offy type people who took up a lot more space in the media than Tom T. Hall, who didn't deserve it. So yeah, he's a guy that I don't really know much, except I found him through the songs, and I think maybe the first song I remember liking Harper Valley PTA, because that was a little before my time. I don't know when. I listened to my mom and dad listened to WHN. I think it was 1050. I can't remember the call, but like the whole time I was growing up, they were listening to this New York country station called WHN, which was a huge station back a million years ago. But anyway, so I heard all current hits, like started paying attention probably when I was, maybe 5 or something. So I was probably 74 to 70. Because I was really tuned into music, and especially the lyrics as a kid. And now still, so the lyrics are the thing I always listen for, even if it's in a song where I'm guaranteed that the lyrics are going to be bad. I just can't stop trying to figure out what they are. So like for country music for me was like, especially since I didn't like my father at the time, I didn't listen to anything he said. So the male voices in my life were country musicians, and for better or for worse, because a lot of their shit is not necessarily advice for good. Especially the outlaw shit, like just the whole drinking, basically just like, glamorizing drinking and failed relationships, and, life being just all about like having a bunch of alcohol related tragedies. And that adds up to like being an outlaw instead of being an alcoholic.
Glamorizing like clinical depression.
There's a fine line between outlaw and just like alcoholic, and also just bad husband or whatever. Like outlaw, like, do you get arrested a lot or something? No, people just really don't like me. I don't know if that's being an outlaw. It's an interesting perspective on it. But I just behave badly. But I live in like a ranch house in the suburbs. Yeah, that's not an outlaw. That's just a dick. So yeah, I think for me, Tom T. Hall was just one of those voices So Harper Valley PTA, unbeknownst to me, was written by Tom T. Hall. So that story song is like, I like story songs, you know, and man, oh man, Tom T. Hall can tell a story, a pretty deep story in 3 fucking minutes. And that is unique to him. There are very few people, if anybody, I can really, who basically packed like a Raymond Carver type short story into 3 minutes and made it catchy. Like, you know, I mean, no offense to Raymond Carver, but you can't sing along to his shit.
Sure. I mean, I guess you could try, or
you could try, but I mean, it's too many words. It'd be so long. And what's the chorus? I mean, you know, like, I don't know enough about Raymond Carver to do a fake Raymond
I don't
Carver
either.
song. I would love to, but I'm just going to pretend like I can't think of anything instead of the fact that I don't know enough to do it.
Well, maybe that'd be a good project, maybe Raymond Carver concept album sort of deal or something like that.
Yeah, you could do the same with who's another short story writer that Southern Gothic.
William Faulkner.
Imagine William Faulkner of country songs would be way too fucking wordy.
Yeah.
So all right, stop describing the fucking woods and get to the chorus. So the song that really blew my fucking mind, which I didn't hear through Tom T. Hall either, was for some reason I ended up, I don't know if in the early 90s I used to dig around in fucking stupid old used CD and promo CD crates at record stores looking for some compilation or promo compilation that had some decent songs on it. And I think I got a Tom T. Hall tribute out of one of those CD crates. And on it was a Joe Henry version of the song Homecoming, which I still think is a badass version of that song. It's really weird, but that was my first experience with that song Homecoming. And that song, before I knew it was by Tom T. Hall, I don't think I thought it was by Joe Henry, but whatever it is, that song for me is the song I mean, Tom T. Hall's written lots of different types of songs, but Homecoming for me is, well, fucking by the time I got to Memphis, but that's just a haunting melody and a haunting, there's just Homecoming is like, gets it so much shit about so much shit in the shortest time possible. Joe Henry drags it out to like 5 minutes or whatever, but Tom T. Hall's version of that song is like fucking 3 minutes and 30 seconds long. And he tells a whole story about generational divides and fucking, I mean, about just show business and how seedy it is in a way, and how and like how a person who works hard on a farm could see it as seedy, and how it makes him self-conscious to be around his dad. And I mean, it's just like, this is 3.5 minutes and it's just a stunning song to me. I mean, it's like a major achievement in my opinion. I mean, it's like everyone should listen to Homecoming and just marvel at, you know, a master of his craft and a beautiful, really a guy who's writing deep short stories, except 3 minutes long and set to music that you can blast in the car. I mean, you know, you can't blast fucking, I love Flannery O'Connor, but you can't blast her.
Well,
nope.
Yeah, no,
I realize it blast. All right, turn her up. That's
sure,
probably some modern expression too. That's probably a hip hop expression or something. It's got to be.
Well, and definitely, you know, talking about Tom T. Hall, it's like you got there's such a wholesomeness to him. It's like almost seems like blasphemous to make a blue joke like that, right? I mean, wholesomeness, but without...
I mean, I could imagine him writing a song called, he probably wrote them privately, you know,
sure,
finger blasting Larry or whatever, you know, I mean, he probably did.
It's probably like,
did his late night sets.
He, you know, I think sometimes, you know, there's like an earnestness to him, or like corniness is maybe not quite the right word. I'm sure some people find a lot of, you know, some of his stuff kind of corny, but like, I think like, I don't know, just how sincere it is. And It's probably, the cynical among us maybe would want to find something corny about it. But like, I don't know, the way that he's able to really just like deliver something like Homecoming is such a good example of like, it's very on its surface, very straightforward. Just from the perspective of a musician talking to his dad, and first time I've talked to my dad in a while, that's the song. That's the whole premise of the song. And he says so much in that brief time, and is able to make it like so profound in a way that's, a lot of I think a lot of country music is that good. Country music is that way.
Got this ring in Mexico, and no, it didn't cost me quite a bunch. In the business that I'm in, people call it putting up a front. I mean, I just love that so much. I just love that, I got this ring in Mexico, and no, it didn't cost me quite a bunch. Just that way of communicating what his father said. Oh, that ring must have cost you quite a bunch, and where it's coming from for the father, like, this is what you spend your money on.
Yeah.
This is the guy I raised this guy to buy big rings. I just love that. And then I love fucking when he says, if you didn't know me better, Dad, you'd think that I'd been in jail, which is another time where you're like, the dad said, you look like you look like you just, if I didn't know you any better, I think you just got out of jail. That song's still giving me stuff. Cause after he died, I listened to it more closely, and I realized there's just beautiful. It's just a beautiful song, because it's like, he even lets you have, your own sort of, you can fill in certain things in that song. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's just such an amazing way of writing that he doesn't just paint the scene, but he also like, you're in there. I mean, I see that song. I don't just hear that song. I see it all, I mean, that ring thing just kills me every time. And I mean, then he gets to like, there's a woman asleep in his car, I mean, it's like out of nowhere. I mean, that's another level for a country song, I mean, like, you don't expect that twist.
That's just a girl who works for me, and man, she plays a pretty mean guitar. Like,
and somehow manages to tell the story of her driving him. I mean, it's like all this information that gets in there so fast.
You hear that conversation between him and his dad. Like, he's able to tell it from that one perspective, and there's so many like shades of the interaction are just like right there under the surface, and it's a profundity that's like, like country music. I think great country music can do that, is like, through something very simple, have this like sort of, I don't know, hard to put into words level of profoundness.
Well, yeah, like, I don't know, the year Clayton Delaney died, like, kind of like, he had, sometimes his instrumentation would make songs that were more serious seem like novelty songs, which makes sense. I mean, he just, every now and then, I wished he didn't have as many like mariachi horns doing like punchlines in his songs. You know what I mean? Because Clayton Delaney died is actually like a kind of a beautiful, I mean, it's still a beautiful song, but you know what I mean? It's another one of those songs where he tells this amazing story. In such a short time. It's so vivid. And what's the one where, then there's the one where like the guy dies and owes people money or whatever it is. That guy, remember that one? Somebody owed me $40. The guy died.
That's one of my favorites.
That's a fucking insane song too. Yeah, that sounds fucking crazy.
That one is, it's another like just like kind of little snapshot of this one little thing happening. And you know what? This is a very English majory thing for me to say, but that song has always reminded me of, did you ever read Albert Camus, The Stranger?
I think so.
That
is that the best I could do on that one? I don't remember. That's
kind of, it's one of my favorite books. I love it. It's very, it's like 200 pages. Or something. So it's a quick read, and it's that song or that book is so good. That book kind of reminds me of Catcher in the Rye in a way, just the way that the point of view is communicated in it. And it is like kind of the main character is like a sociopath, sort of like Holden Caulfield, but that book opens with I think the opening line is like, Mama died today. And it's about this guy, his mother just died and he's at her funeral. And it's like, oh, Mama died today, or maybe it was yesterday. I can't remember. It's like the opening line of the book. And that it puts you into this story of this guy who is just like very detached and like just like existentially just like just apart from everything around him, and like at his mother's funeral, but very not there at the same time. And it's a kind of haunting opening to that book. And then Tom T. Hall, obviously it's in this kind of more laid back and like jokey way, but that song, because it reminds me so much of that opening of The Stranger, like has always kind of made me think about like, what are like some of the, he hints at some dark-ish thoughts in that song. And, he's at a funeral, and, there are little moments in that song of like an existential sort of questioning that he's doing, but in that very everyman Tom T. Hall sort of way,
Yeah. I miss I guess when I was thinking about doing this podcast with you, I was thinking about how I would talk about Tom T. Hall. And I think of him as one of the things that's lost when everybody's voice is given equal weight. Like every dum-dum in the world has a YouTube show and everybody's just babbling and babbling and babbling. Is I'm sure there are voices out there like Tom T. Hall's that are getting drowned out. But as a person who, we need artistic leaders. We need leaders. We are stuck now, since we've taken a hammer and smashed art into a million smithereens, all the smithereens talking at once. We have the only people who have like the real like focused platform. This is kind of complicated thought, but the idea of the Senate and the Congress actually have like, they're like the music industry used to be. Here are 100 voices that have been sort of elevated through, it's an imperfect system, but there used to be somewhat of a, by the fact that the music industry was functioning and it was a moneyed business, there was a certain amount of curation. People were looking at the art and saying, is this going to make us money? And that's not to say that the best art always makes money, but the idea that there was some way of sorting through all these voices and somebody saying, even if it was a little indie label in 1975, saying this guy's got something to say, as opposed to now, everyone can self-release their record. That's great, but it's great in a way. Like, we need voices to speak against the voices of our politicians. The reasons politicians get so much attention now is because everyone else, there's no artistic leader they can turn to ask for a counterpoint, because there's 15 billion artists and most of them have nothing to say, but they all have equal access to GarageBand. And so you've got a really bad landscape where art has been smashed to pieces, and politicians and billionaires command the airwaves. And are recognizable voices and therefore seem more authoritative. Like, recognizable voices, that matters. If you hear different voices saying stuff, all I'm saying is like Tom T. Hall was a voice for me that I was glad was elevated, and I heard. There were tons of other things on country radio that didn't speak to me the same way. There were lots of country songs I didn't give a shit about, and I'm talking about as a 7-year-old. But then I heard Tom T. Hall's voice and I said, oh, this is a voice I need. I need a male voice to tell me what life's about, because my dad doesn't do it. So, I just feel like right now we need competent artistic voices to combat the voices that have been artificially elevated through Um, uh,
Algorithms.
I mean, it's not a meritocracy. It never was a meritocracy, but it was more of a meritocracy. And I know that that term is overused, but when there was more of an industry, or when there had been, before things got truly monopolized. I mean, there's just monopolies is what happens. Monopolies now decide who's elevated, and the other people who are elevated are politicians. But the politicians are elevated by monopolies too, through dark money and super PACs. I mean, the voices are being elevated artificially by money instead of by artistic merit. So we're not getting, there's like less likely that a billionaire is not even going to want to put out music by someone who's really got an authoritative voice, because they're not looking for authoritative voices. They're looking for noise. They're looking for content that they can stick ads on. They're not looking for profundity. They're not looking for a Tom T. Hall. A Tom T. Hall actually would take attention away from their vacuum cleaner or whatever the fuck they're trying to. So we're in big trouble as far as like, we need. These voices are not just things you can throw away and have a culture. These are voices that save my ass. Like, art saves people from politics. Art saves people. And right now, art being fully owned by the same people who own the politics means these voices will not get to kids the way they used to get to me. And I don't know. I think you know what I'm saying, but I miss the Tom T. Halls. I'm not saying that, and it could be a female voice. I mean, the first person who always comes to mind for me is PJ Harvey, who's not a fucking country musician, but like that's the first female that always comes to my head. But Dolly Parton, her songwriting, fuck. I mean, I'm trying to think of. I just in terms of voices, I was just thinking. I mean, Bruce Springsteen, that sort of communal. I mean, even an idiot like Bono, like he had a platform, like he was able to create a platform where he could, I mean, most of the shit he said, it turns out he has a bunch of offshore bank accounts, but he spoke in this way that was like a voice against the barbarity of politicians. Like he did say, like, at least he spoke in like general, like, love is the answer. We need people saying that, and we need people who have big microphones to say that, but these microphones have been shattered on purpose. These people are not elevated. This society is purposely squashing and good loving messages. Anyway, I miss that. I miss voices like Tom T. Hall. Tom T. Hall taught me in a roundabout way to be kind and to not be a hypocrite. Harper Valley PTA is all, I mean, it could be a song about anti-maskers, really. I mean, in a way, I mean, he's talking about hypocrisy. He's talking about, and again, in 3 minutes, well,
that, when he died, the three words that I, was saying, his message of, and trying to sum it up, the three things that really came to mind for me are, three concepts, I guess, were just like compassion, humility, and another through line was savoring life, enjoying life and appreciating what you've got while you've got it, almost like a mindfulness, being like a sense of gratitude and being able to appreciate, the little things in life. And I think that he gets, explicitly political in a lot of his songs, but I think in that sense that a lot of great artists who communicate sort of a good social message without really having to try too much of the time are able to just kind of elevate those values of everyday life, and in the sense that, appreciating what you've got, and, this kind of, we ain't got much, but we got each other kind of attitude is, that's completely antithetical to like capitalism and the idea of, we always have to be growing. Everything has to always be like, we always have to be making our pile of bullshit bigger, as opposed to just like appreciating what it is we have. And I think without really like, it's like Tom T. Hall probably wouldn't have said I'm explicitly, I'm an anti-capitalist or whatever. But I think by being against materialism, and that's not such a roundabout way of being, I think Tom T. Hall's dad was a preacher. And he talked about, I remember reading an interview with him where he said something about like, yeah, my dad, he was a preacher, but he didn't preach about the things like, people shouldn't wear makeup and dance and, wear jewelry or whatever. He preached about compassion and love. And, I think that's what Tom T. Hall really essentially was all about, was like, aside from, this is what I think a good life is like.
Yeah, he kind of retired. He retired to like, some suburb of Nashville. He stopped recording. He stopped. I mean, I read some interview with him just after he died where he said something like he just stopped writing songs at a certain point. He just sort of didn't do it anymore. But not in a way where he was sad about it. He was just like, I moved on to a different, just a different part of my life. But I mean, like he's level-headed, in a way that it seems he was level-headed in a way a lot of artists are not, which is not to say that everyone should aspire to be an artist that can just be completely normal. I would imagine that Tom T. Hall had, he just didn't talk about his intimate thoughts. I just imagine he probably had problems. Everybody has problems, but yeah, he basically wrote about how you can look to other people in your community kind of and learn stuff about life in that, or all you need to know really about life is all right around you. And when you get into like the situation we're in with like 150 million voices, that's not what you want. You want a few voices that you can learn all you need to know from. Like, and Tom T. Hall was one of those voices. And it's like me, like people say, oh, well, like as far as like my writing, like I'm writing this book and well, they haven't announced it yet, but I'm doing this book and it's it's a book of my advice columns, and people compare my writing to Kurt Vonnegut, and I'm so happy about that, But the thing is about me is like I didn't keep reading people past Kurt Vonnegut much. I read a few people that I read enough to find the voices that, oh, these are the voices. And then I moved on and started creating stuff. But I don't like sit around looking for new voices. You don't need a million voices. You only need a few that tell you what the deal is. And Tom T. Hall was one of those voices. Kindness, calling out bullshit, having fun with nothing. I mean, that's a big one. Just like having fun. Like I'm here, stories about taking a normal mundane day that now, like, keeping up with the Kardashians would make look like a shitty day because you didn't get like a fur coat or something. And you would just have a day like that. And everything happens in that day that, and this is true. Everything happens in a normal day that you're ever going to get out of life. It just depends how you look at it. And that's what Tom T. Hall was about. He taught you that everything you need is right around you. And I don't know if he intended to do that. I think that's just his perspective. He did. He wrote songs. So he obviously intended to some extent to communicate those values. And I think he saw value in communicating those. He doesn't, that's another thing he didn't really talk about. Like, my philosophy of life is this, and this is the reason I wrote these songs. But he does communicate kindness, anti-racism, and he does it low key, he does it beautifully because he knows how to do it without fucking, bashing you over the head with it. which can be even more effective than bashing you over the head with it. Because he appealed to me as a kid, just because I could hear his stories, and it's a good thing a man with a gift like that wasn't a politician. It's a good thing that the clods that we have in politics can't tell stories, because if they could tell stories like Tom T. Hall, then we'd probably all think global warming wasn't happening. Tom T. Hall had a gift, and that's what I think. You got to choose the voices you follow in this life, and they're valuable. And for me, especially as a person who was really not given a lot of information by my parents about how to act or how to survive, these artistic voices were important to me. They're not something that can be sacrificed. And I don't pretend to be people. Like, there's nothing wrong with turning there. Like, I'm not Tom T. Hall. I'm not like, you shouldn't, to say that someone else's voice is more important, that someone's voice is more important than another person's voice, is not to invalidate the other person's voice. You just, like, there are certain wise people, women and men, that you should pay attention to. And we're not all the same, and we should pick out the voices. And it's not an insult to say that one person is wise and another person is not wise, because he might be wise in some other way. But now everybody wants to be important, and it's just sort of creating the overall effect is just static. And then somehow sociopaths muscle their way to the top, like fucking Joe Rogan, and that's the voice we have to deal with. And he's not smart enough to carry the weight that this culture is putting on him. He's just not. He's not smart enough. Yeah, that's
an understatement.
A wise man. But he is. That's the thing, and that's the problem with corporate power being able to elevate a voice like his when it doesn't deserve it. He does not deserve the position he has at all. And I'm not even saying I don't fucking hate Joe Rogan, except when I listen to him and his friends talk. I was kind of blown away, because if you tune into him now, he seems sort of reasonable, or, more reasonable, because he's had to, like, pull back. But, like, you hear those old things with him and his friends laughing it up, and he's friends with Brian Callen and all these fucking sex offenders, and they laugh about, he's not a good guy. And he's also not qualified to be a voice of a generation or any of that kind of shit. He's been underwritten by Spotify, who is like one fucking Danish dude. Who's deciding who your kids are listening to. So fucking, I don't know. The end of this is like, smash your laptop. Like, make your kids listen to Tom T. Hall. But that's kind of true. I just know that's not going to happen. But when you find a voice that matters, there's nothing wrong with celebrating that voice. And it doesn't mean you think everyone else is an idiot, or you think that, we need heroes. We need heroes we need qualified heroes. We need heroes of substance, not assholes like the Kardashians and fucking Joe Rogan. We need people who fucking actually have a fucking brain in their fucking head, who can teach you about how you don't need a TV show to be happy, or you don't need I don't know what. I guess that's enough. I don't really have anything else to say, except for I was about to start just insulting Joe Rogan for being a UFC fan or something. That's fine, I guess. I don't know. It's like, if you're really into physical violence, I guess that's fine, I guess. Like, that's great. It's great. I love physical violence. I love sex. Like, I love, like, I don't know what Joe Rogan stands for, but it doesn't seem to be much.
Yeah. I don't know a whole lot about him. I guess I've listened to quite a bit of Joe Rogan, though, just because his episodes are so damn long. But I especially since he moved over to Spotify, like, I just don't pay attention to what is going on with him anymore. But I think, like, a big problem with, like, people like who achieve these, like, positions of prominence. It's like, the thing, you know, you were talking about how Tom T. Hall is like so under the radar, and he wrote so many amazing songs, but like he's so unassuming and just like really kind of blends in and never really seemed to try to stand out at all. Like he just did his thing and, you know, enjoyed and like savored life as best he could. And the problem is like those people who have like really good philosophies of life don't get elevated because they're like, I mean, I'm not going to put in the effort to become, you know, to elevate myself or have others elevate me in that way, because like that's not happiness. And the problem is they never get elevated to a position to tell enough people that, you know, that's not what life is all about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's like, it's a weird thing. There aren't very many voices, but the voices that are elevated are more loud than any time in history because of the reach of the internet. So it's like you have these like, there's like very little middle ground. It's like there used to be a lot of voices that you could listen to that had made it to a certain point, but now there's like, now that there's monopolies and tech, you know, it's like, it's weird. It's just there are fewer voices, and the voices that are there are louder than they ever possibly could have been in the past. You know, so you really have like, not only are the wrong people being elevated, but they have more power and more reach than any time in history. I mean, you know, there's emperors. There's never been anyone with as much power as like Mark Zuckerberg ever. I mean, you could run the Prussian Empire or whatever, but you go over to some other country and people would fucking trip you. You know what I mean? You could be the king of Prussia and show up in fucking Guatemala and fucking the Aztecs would chop you up. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, no one's ever lorded over the earth with voices as big as these idiots. Like, and it's not a mistake that these voices are voices that push capitalism and encourage mindlessness. You know, if Joe Rogan was a real leftist, he wouldn't have gotten a deal with Spotify. You know, I mean, if he was if every show he talked about redistributing wealth, which is all anyone should really talk about if they're talking about anything.
Sure.
If you're not talking about redistributing wealth every time you have a microphone in front of you, then you're really a fool. I mean, at least once a show, you should say that at the end. Like, and also in addition to maybe the pyramids were made in fucking by aliens or whatever, also redistribute wealth or none of this is going to fucking matter. We can speculate about the pyramids all day long, but we are going to be pyramids if we don't fucking start redistributing wealth. You know what I mean? Like, so ultimately, if you got a voice that big, they're not going to let you. I mean, there's a reason Sam Cedar's show is tiny. And this is a funny thing. I want to bring up Sam Cedar only because I watch that show so fucking much. I watch it after the fact and like
I love him.
Right. But I have a feeling when I'm on Daily Zeitgeist and I say like Sam Cedar, I feel like I this might be wrong, but I feel like Miles and Jack both kind of like they don't go, yeah. I don't know if that's because he's competition for them or whether somebody knows something about Sam Cedar I don't know. I think maybe is Sam Cedar in real life a giant dick or something like that, because I don't feel like people, whenever I mention Sam Cedar, I'm always like, oh yeah, Sam Cedar. Everybody's kind of like, yeah. I mean, anybody who's like in media seems to sneer. I don't know why, but maybe I'm making that up. But I've a couple times I've mentioned him on Daily Zeitgeist and I've got no response from Jack.
Maybe
and Miles.
they're just like just not familiar with them or don't like.
I think he does a great job. People fucking yell at him for being not anti-corporate enough, whatever. I get more information from that show. And I know I just like every show's got to be torn apart. That's the thing is like, you know, try and do something. It's like everybody's just like Emma Vigeland, fuck her. You know what I mean? Like immediately everybody's just like, oh, she's not as good as Michael. Fuck her. She's a corporate piece of shit. Her parents are both speechwriters for George Bush or whatever. That's not true, but there's something like that. They're like, both their parents are corporate lawyers or something. So it's like, But you can be a good person and have parents that are evil. I mean, fuck. David Berman, man. I mean, David Berman was definitely his father was a lobbyist, one known as Dr. Evil. David Berman's father is the most evil lobbyist in Washington, and that's why he's an artist.
I know that.
You know what I mean? So like Emma Vigeland could be, she could be sick of seeing her full of shit corporate lawyer parents and still be a good voice. I mean, I'm interested because I do spend too much time watching that, but I find out I get good information from that show that I wouldn't otherwise know about. I guess it's as simple as that. And Jimmy Dore, fuck that shit.
Yeah, no, Jimmy Dore aesthetically just totally fucking obnoxious.
For a minute I was like, for a minute before I found Sam Cedar, I found Jimmy Dore, and for a minute I was like, Jimmy Dore, man, he's kicking ass. And then I was like, that was like 3 years ago, and he's gotten a lot worse. Jimmy Dore's gotten a lot worse. But yeah, I mean, his whole he is definitely one of those frustrated stand-up comedians. Like, he thinks he's funny, and he's not funny. And he also wears fedoras and shit. Fucking that show looks like a broadcast from hell. I mean, the aesthetic and everything.
It really, just his logo is ugly as shit. Like the font that it uses, and it's like I always say, everything conservatives make is really fucking ugly, like just aesthetically. But also a lot of what Michael Brooks used to call the dumb left. I love that term. Like Jimmy Dore and some of the people, the force the vote people, not that all of them I think are complete idiots or whatever. And I really, the leftist infighting stuff is obviously not really productive, but fucking, those Jimmy Dore especially, but people along those lines. So much, and a lot of the kind of more hipsterish types really bug me. I like
that show. Sam Cedar's pretty academic. He reminds me of Ian Masters. I don't know if you know who Ian Masters is, but the fuck is the name of his show? It's on Pacifica Radio, which is this long time independent radio network that doesn't take corporate contributions. It was actually the first time I was ever background briefing with Ian Masters. That's what it's called. And look it up. It's a great show. He interviews very cool people. It's been going on for years. I liked him the same way I like Sam Cedar, just for information, not so much like a cult of personality. I don't necessarily think Sam's that funny or anything, but I just get good. The force the vote thing, Sam Cedar and that show, would say, well, yeah, you could force the vote and it's going to lose.
Yeah.
And then what happens? You're advocating for trolling in Congress, which doesn't really work. I mean, it might, be fun. Sure. Oh, force the vote, but it's and that's the thing is the lefty people that will say, well, if you try and work within the system, you're wasting your time. But that's the only system we have right now. And unfortunately, I mean, yeah, it's not force the vote. You'll force a vote, you'll lose, and that'll be the end of that. You know what I mean? That's really the end of that. That's where that happened. I mean, so Jimmy Dore can yell about that all day long, but I'm not a pragmatist. I would love it if we could throw everybody out of Congress and get rid of all the money in politics and all that stuff. But unfortunately, we fucking, the boomers were so busy fucking enjoying their convertible sports cars that nobody fucking paid attention to anything. And now we're fucked. I'm so mad at boomers. I mean, they didn't do anything.
As you should be. Right?
Well, because they all fucking just enjoyed the post-war boom. I guess this is how it's going to be. We can do whatever we fucking want. And we don't have to vote except for just cartoon left, right nonsense. I'll vote for Ronald Reagan. I like America, voting like that, it's oh, look, this is where we're at,
That's, my dad is fairly conservative kind of, but I would always bring up how
low info conservative. That's what they all are.
Well, yeah, that's comes with the territory, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that he will, but I think I'm on the left mostly, or really have like radical politics because of my dad in a weird way, because he's always been so much about like, be true to yourself and always speak your mind and, all this stuff. And it's kind of, and he's always been very good about like engaging with me and having the long conversations with me. But, he'll be like, oh, don't you get too worked up and worried about this politics stuff. And it's like, well, if your generation hadn't completely fucked up the world, I wouldn't maybe really have to be. But it's like very privileged thing to say, but, especially coming from boomers. But
I lived through it. I was convinced by my parents, and they were convinced by their parents that there was this inherent compass running America that we didn't need to worry about where it was going, and just it would take care of itself, and we just need to vote or not vote, and we can vote for whatever cartoon we like better, and then you end up, with, really the monopolies are the biggest problem. Like there is no antitrust stuff happening during their entire, all the time. The boomers are just fucking, writing checks at the grocery store or whatever the fuck they were doing. They just thinking it was like old time. I don't know. They just thought everything was taken care of. Like if we enforced antitrust laws, the world would look a lot different, and it would look a lot better. And that's something that they should have been keeping an eye on. But instead they were just like going to the movies and seeing a river runs through it or whatever. Actually, that's like a later movie, but they were watching like, I don't know, Poseidon Adventure. Fuck, imagine what it'd be like to have trouble in your life. Well, thank goodness we're in America, because then nothing ever happens. Truly.
They're all like breathing this just collective unearned sigh of relief.
Right. And watching movies for excitement. Like, oh, imagine if there were terrorists running around. That'd be funny. That happens in other countries though. So Die Hard's funny. Die Hard's crazy. Like all those, they got all their kicks from the movies and wrote checks. That's all I remember from growing up is my mom writing checks.
So many checks.
Yep.
Do you ever what was I just thinking of? David Pakman. Do you ever watch him? Have you seen
I've looked at him a little bit. He's one that I'm not crazy about his like the way it looks, like kind of thing, the way his channel looks that much. So I just don't like sort of look at it. I really am kind of hung up on Sam Cedar. I hope he doesn't let me down. I hope I don't find out that he's a creep of some sort. I just feel like I get what I need from him, and then I can figure out the rest myself.
I've been watching Sam Cedar for a while, and I feel like he's legit. I think he's he's had some bad takes on shit or whatever, and he's not perfect, but I think he's good. Sam Cedar's good. And
and I love Michael Brooks. Michael Brooks introduced me to the whole fucking, I wouldn't even know who how you ever pronounce his fucking name, Jair Bolsonaro or Lula. I wouldn't know about any of that shit. And that's so relevant.
Michael Brooks was fantastic. Yeah. He was the first like leftist online dude I really got into.
Yeah. And he was informed in a way. This is the thing, is like, it's like anybody you find who's not talking out of their ass is a miracle. People who actually do some research and Michael Brooks certainly was a person who you could tell, knew more than I know,
so
I know what I know, but it's not it's not what he knows. I'm not saying that I don't know anything, but I know I'm more emotional. I need information. I tend to be very reactionary in this, like, like lefty, but not like realistic at all. Like, I would be the kind of person who would be like, force the vote, force the fucking vote. If I was still drinking, I'd definitely be like part of that crowd. I'd be like, force the fucking vote, take it fucking down. Then I go to rehab and be like, oh, fuck.
Well, we're artists. We're allowed to be like, fucking like that.
It's also privilege. Like, it's like funny that Jimmy Dore thinks he personally can like direct the government. That's like that's definitely white man shit. You know what I mean? Like, I fucking have to wait one more minute for AOC to force the vote, I'm going to fucking blow my stack. Also, I'll be live at a sports bar selling t-shirts tomorrow. Yeah, anyway, so I'm not gonna be on the Jimmy Dore show ever, or fucking Joe Rogan. God damn it.
That would be I mean, just one time to go on Joe. You know, I've had I think 2 guests on this show, maybe just one, who have been on Joe Rogan before.
Really?
Which is fucking crazy. Because this show does not have it's not huge for sure. I mean, but I had a Mick West, dude. He's like a conspiracy debunker guy. I had him on, and that was he also designed one of the some of the Tony Hawk games. There's like a game designer. I don't know. Interesting dude, but he was a really nice guy. But anyhow, the that's such a weird thing. It's like Joe Rogan has just had so many fucking episodes that like eventually, you know, everybody goes on Joe Rogan, it seems like.
Yeah, well, that fucking, I mean, I just was blown away by, not blown away is a little, whatever. I don't know. All I know is that I saw some Joe Rogan for some reason, I think, hangs out with like sex criminals. Like, I mean,
that sounds about right.
I mean, the clip that knocked me out in terms of how shitty it was the one. Brian Callen is this comedian who was friends with Chris D'Elia.
Oh,
you know, best friends with Chris D'Elia. He's in Nashville, Brian Callen. I mean, these people all ran away to Nashville and to Austin, where they feel like they can't be canceled or whatever. But Brian Callen, man, I mean, Joe Rogan joked on the show about Brian Callen being the kind of person who comes inside a woman after saying he wouldn't and laughing hysterically about that. So these are the things where it's like,
Jesus,
Joe Rogan, and that's Brian Callen. I mean, they're talking about Brian Callen. You know, Brian, he'll tell a woman he's not going to come in her and he'll do it. And they all laughed, you know, and it's like, that's why we need organically grown voices instead of voices that Danish weirdos who own Spotify shove down our fucking kids' throats, because, you know, kids are finding that shit. Kids see that shit. Kids find everything. Anybody who's ever had weed in their house and has a kid knows that. You can staple that shit to the ceiling fan. That shit's gone. So anyway, you can hide that shit hiding it in the peanut butter would be a terrible idea. Because kids like peanut butter. Anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about anymore, but I am like, I do want to say that the fact that Zanies in Nashville is like provided a home for these fucking sex criminal comedians is just disgusting. And it makes me sad because Nashville is, for the most part, a bunch of nice people.
Yeah, it's Nashville's a great town. I've only been there a handful of times. But yeah, it seems like didn't fucking Ben Shapiro move there?
They all move there because they think it's like an atmosphere where they can exist. And in some ways they're right. There's a lot of in the surrounding areas surrounding Nashville. I mean, I don't think any of those people live in Nashville proper. They probably all live in the suburbs. But anyway, I was shocked to learn that basically all the canceled comedians from the Comedy Store have moved to Nashville and moved to Austin. You know, which was very publicly shown when Tony Hinchcliffe did that anti-Asian fucking shit in Austin. It doesn't matter, but I just know that these people have taken refuge in places they think in red states that they think will tolerate their bullshit. But I just want to mention that, that Zanies in Nashville is harboring like, rapists. I mean, it's really shitty.
Yeah. I mean, that whole crew of Legion of Skanks and all that, like, it's just like scumbags who are like super proud of it for some reason. Like,
it's insane. It's so comedic fascism is all it is. It's Proud Boys under a different name. But anyway, I don't even know why I'm talking about that. I mean, it just occurs to me that when I think of Joe Rogan, his connections are, because as much as I can enjoy maybe an interview he does with like Bob Lazar or whatever, then there's the flip side of that where he's like really demonstrated that he's not a good person. So anyway, Tom T. Hall, man.
Tom T. Hall
You can
represents...
cut this. Maybe you will have to edit. I mean, I don't know. I was kind of rambling, but yeah, Tom T. Hall, like just
he represents the antithesis of a lot of that type of bullshit, I think. You know, I mean, I guess like those guys like to think of themselves as being very authentic and sincere. But, you know, I mean, I guess, you know, it's like the whole Trump is he speaks his mind or whatever.
Right. It's
in a way, but kind of it's all bullshit.
It's like, you know, it's a diseased mind. You know, speaking your mind is not always the best thing if you've got something wrong with your mind. And when you get people laughing about coming inside women without their consent, then you realize that, yeah, this isn't locker room talk. This is abnormal. This is a locker room that most people have never been in. And it's the kind of locker room that has been elevated by monopolies, you know, because people don't, that's the thing is all that stuff about Trump, that's locker room talk, man. I've been in locker rooms. People might talk about wanting to have sex. No one talks about, I grab people's pussies. No one says that. No one says I grab people's pussies. I've been in locker rooms. I grew up like I went to high school and stuff. People don't say that. People don't say it's funny that my friend came inside somebody against their will. That's not locker room talk. That's fucking sex criminal talk. And that's not normal. And I can guarantee you, now I'm just going to say, I can guarantee you, and you know, I can't prove it, but I can guarantee you that Tom T. Hall has never been in a locker room like that. And neither have I. And that's not a normal locker room. That's a fucking sex criminal locker room.
Well, I mean, I think it's like more normal or more common than I ever thought. Like that's one thing about Me Too that was like so jarring and strange. It's like you know, that started when I was, I guess, in my late 20s at the time when that started. And it's like, I've made it through this much of life. And like, you know, I have close friends who we're fucking irreverent and, you know, make dirty, disgusting jokes. And like but the level of like nastiness in a just like disgusting, mean way that came out was like, holy shit, like guys are just this comfortable with like making women feel unsafe, basically, is what came out of Me Too. That was like, I can't believe that. And so when you say like, you know, that's not normal locker room talk, it's like, I feel like, have guys been like, guys do talk like this, but they like bite their tongue when they're around me or whatever, because they, you know, I'm proud of that. If they do, if they think I'm going to like call them out on that, that's good, I guess. But I don't know. It's just like,
I don't know. Just a message to any kid out there. You know, curate your heroes. Don't just listen to the voices that have been elevated, because in a monopolistic is that a word? Not in a monopolized culture, in a culture full of media monopolies, the voices that have been elevated are often highly suspect heroes. So you know, curate your own fucking hall of fame. You know, curate your own voices. Voices are important. Voices of kindness. Tom T. Hall was a voice that taught me. Joe Rogan is not a voice that teaches. You know, find teachers. You know, I'm going to try and be a good guy. You know, I want to be, you know, when I was a drinker, I was much more like, I had these ideas of what masculinity was, like, you know, smoking and drinking and swaggering or trying to, you know, I thought that's what I was trying to do that. You know, but I'm not that guy. And I don't have to be. You know, that just fucking grow up, you know, try and grow up. I mean, make this life interesting. Fucking personal growth, not snickering like high school kids about high school stuff. I mean, not even high school stuff, abnormal. Yeah, I don't know what this is cold brew talking now, but basically,
I should have gotten some cold brew for this.
Just like, there's no version of, you define masculinity, you define femininity. These are yours to define. No one tells you, and Tom T. Hall was one of those voices that taught me about kindness and acceptance. And they're out there.
I found myself the other day, was talking to some students just like about how, I've always worked with kids, like since I was in high school, worked at like after school programs and stuff. And it's like, I feel like I was telling them, I never really thought about it this way, but I was like, I think I just don't relate to a lot of adults, and I kind of, get frustrated with them because they're unimaginative a lot of times. There's an unwillingness to, or like a lack of like curiosity and an unwillingness to entertain different, uncomfortable ideas, but not just in the sense of like that bullshit, like edgy comedy or whatever. It's like, something like Tom T. Hall, not being afraid to just be like, he had a childlike quality to him in the best kind of way, like not being afraid to be like corny or whatever, and to like, let the just being appreciative of life, be as profound as it is and can be.
Yeah.
And
oh fuck, I gotta mention a couple of songs I forgot. I don't know. I don't know if he wrote this song, but I Couldn't Live in Southern California.
I think he did write that. I know you mentioned that.
I love that fucking song. It's a very simple song, but it's fucking beautiful. It's something so beautiful about it. I didn't know. It's not like it took a while to show up. It was like on an album that was out of print. A bunch of his shit's out of print. Actually, you can find. You got to hunt for. He's written so many songs, and there's only a limited number on streaming services. Yeah. So if there's a lot to find if you get into Tom T. Hall, and I recommend it. There's a lot to go through, and that for me too. Like I didn't hear I Couldn't Live in Southern California, which I just thought was until like, a few years ago. And that song came out in like 1978 or whatever. But I love that song, and I live in Southern California. And so I tend to love those, it's like California Freeway, LA Freeway by Guy Clark. I love those. I love those because I'm always on the freeway in LA, and I'm always having the same thoughts. Like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. I gotta go back and live in a field. Then I get in the field and I'm like, this is boring. I want to be back in the fucking city. Anyway, that song, and then the song Come Back to Nashville, I think it's called, which I don't know why I like it. I used to live in Nashville, so it's probably part of it, but it's just such a simple song, but there's something about his voice is so warm, and it's just Come Back to Nashville. We put a new coat of paint on Music Row and stuff, and I also like thinking about how Tom T. Hall is like partially responsible for destroying Nashville by telling people to come there, which is not true, because back then there was like underpopulated and they probably needed people. But now it's like, don't go to Nashville, unless you want to fucking have some person in a butcher apron serve you an $8 latte. Actually, that's more like 2008. Now it's just like, unless you want to just like be in the world's largest convention center. I don't know what happens in Nashville anymore, but yeah, that fucking song, Come Back to Nashville, is a fun song. I don't know why I like it so much. I just like the way it's the instrumentation and everything. It's just kind of corny, but I mean, that's not an important one to check out. I'd say, well, I Couldn't Live in Southern California though. Definitely. I love that song. That was when you mentioned that one. I'd heard it before, but that definitely wasn't in regular rotation for me. So that song makes me cry. There's something about it that's just so beautiful. He talks about, I think I couldn't live in Southern California. I don't know. What is it? I don't know. Fuck. Hold on a second. I'm just going to play a little bit of it.
Sure.
Because I want to hear, because something he says, I don't know, nothing I could do. I think he says in Southern California, I think it's like, that's what he says. He says, basically saying, you know, there's no place for me here. It's pretty, but what would I do out here? You know what I mean? There's something like, these are the little things he communicates. And like these, I don't know, nothing I could do. I think that's what he says. You know, and you got to go back. If you're looking at a streaming service, you got to go through, like, got to go down, because they like people tend to like the most novelty songs. It's like, if you go look up Loudon Wainwright, you'll get fucking Dead Skunk, you know, which I know for a fact is his least favorite song he's ever written. And fans still scream it at him. I've seen Loudon Wainwright live where those fans are just like, play Dead Skunk. And he's like, I don't want to. And they're like, play it anyway. And he's like, all right, but I'm not going to like it. And people are like, I don't care. Like, people like, it's kind of amazing. They force him to play it even when he says, I don't want to. It was like for an encore. And they were like, I'm going to play an encore. And everyone started screaming Dead Skunk. And he's like, that's not what I want to play. That's like the last thing I want to play. And they were like, we don't fucking care. So he's like, I'm only doing one more song. That's what you want? I don't even want to play it. They're like, yes. So, you know, people can't stop wanting to hear the catchphrase. But the first 5 songs on Spotify are like, I like beer, old dogs, children, watermelon wine, which are nice. But, you know, that's how I got to Memphis is number 1, though. That's great. Hold on a second. Sorry, you can cut this out of here. Hold on a second. Southern California. I couldn't live in Southern California. Oh, this will get cut for copyright, though, won't it? Yeah.
I don't think so.
I couldn't live in Southern California. I don't know of nothing I could do. I couldn't live in Southern California, babe. Not unless I live there with you.
That's enough right there. I just love that. I don't know, nothing I could do just kills me. Something about the way he says it, you know, it's just, it's like, yeah, it's just his version of saying, fuck Joe Rogan. You know, he's like, I don't need that shit. You know, it's pretty, but I just like to write some songs and live my life. And there's local colors, enough color for me. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, that sentiment of like,
I love that.
You know, I feel kind of separate from the folks around me, and you know, I'm sort of, you know, that sensation of just like being in your own, not feeling like you belong.
Yeah, I'm in show business, but I'm not in the lose my soul kind of show business. Like, I don't need that. Like, I'm in show business to communicate love, to maybe make some money, and pay for my milk and my cereal, you know, and that's, you know, and I don't need, like, I don't know, nothing I could do. I don't need that shit. Like, I'm in show business, yes, but I'm in it on my own terms, and it's a humane way of being in it. I'm not losing my humanity. You can take that. But I will say Southern California is very pretty. You know what I mean? That's what he said. I get it. This is great, but I'm not living here because I'm not stabbing people in the back to make art. You know, I'll just make it on my own over in Tennessee, you know. And unfortunately, now that that there aren't like little labels where you can make your little art and make your milk and cereal money, now it's just gotten a little rough. You know, it's gotten, everybody feels like they have to be dog eat dog, but really we just need to reimagine what are the scale of things and where we need to be. We don't need to be Joe Rogan. We don't need to be listening to Joe Rogan. It's think local, act local. That kind of mentality is the future, or the future is just fucked, you know. But some smart people will always, I mean, even if the world ends, quote unquote, there will be some motherfuckers who fucking got a little farm going who will survive it, and they'll have kids, and their kids hopefully will never know anything about anything called the internet, and they won't start it again.
Only hope.
You know, I mean, like, if your kid starts farming the internet, planting wires, don't, ground them immediately. And that's a pun. Get it? Ground and wires. Shit. Holy fuck. Can we leave it there? Because I feel really proud of that.
Dude, that's profound. So
I'm going to go for a hike now.
Yeah, I'm mindful of your time. We've been on mic
as
for
usual.
Like,
2 hours or something.
A bit, but is there anything else? I guess I'll mention maybe in an intro or something some other thoughts on Tom T. Hall. You know, we didn't really get into talking about like his explicitly political stuff. But you know, that's kind of the beauty. I remember you mentioned something about like last time you were on the show, like, you know, Prince was just political just by being Prince, you know, and I think like a lot of times that's really all you need to do is just be authentic, be true to yourself and be true to your art. And that's what Tom T. Hall was. And I think like he communicated so much like value, so many different values that are so important without having to really like say them outright.
Yeah. And there's something about, you don't have to like do an in-depth interview with someone to always know where they're coming from. You know, that's why some people might say, oh, you're naive to think that Tom T. Hall wasn't a monster. But, you know, sometimes you got to go with your gut. Tom T. Hall was a good guy. You can actually tell. And your gut's not always wrong. And I don't mean that in the way of like your gut tells you whether or not you have COVID or whatever. I just mean like your gut. If you have a sense of a person, if Tom T. Hall, you know, spends 10 years communicating love, you can be guaranteed that he's a lover.
Well, that's a beautiful place to leave it, I think. Thanks so much for joining me today, Mr. Chris Crofton. Where can people find you and, you know, plug your stuff? If you, I'll plug it up top in the intro as well, but you know, what are you plugging these days?
Oh, what am I plugging? I have a Spotify talk show. I mean, I'm like kind of like part of the problem. What I will be plugging is, first of all, Kevin, thank you very much for having me on the show. And it's always fun. And I appreciate your voice on the internet and stuff and what you're doing. I think you're trying to get the word out about kindness and fun. And I'm doing my show Cold Brew Got Me Like every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, which is 8:30 Central, fucking 9:30 Eastern, whatever. But then the main way people are listening to it is on Spotify or on those other evil monopolies that I'm trying to take down from the inside. So you can listen to Apple Podcasts, wherever you can listen to Cold Brew Got Me Like as a podcast. And you can check out my record, Hello, It's Me, that came out in 2018 on Arrowhawk Records. I've got a new record finished, and I think it'll be coming out early next year. I mean, it will be coming out early next year. It's a bummer that it hasn't come out already, but you know, it's just everybody's just schedule got pushed fucking way back. So I'm not saying that as a shot at Arrowhawk at all. Alyssa rules, Arrowhawk rules, go buy stuff from Arrowhawk. And then besides that, you can follow me on Twitter at The Crofton Show. And I write a lot of poems on there, and you can follow me on Instagram at The Crofton Show. I put a lot of fucking stupid pictures up there.
I highly recommend everything that Chris Crofton does. And
thank you, Kevin, very much.
I love all your stuff, and
I'm grateful for the support. I'm grateful for you having me on the show. I'm very grateful for the Daily Zeitgeist introducing me to really an absolutely wonderful community of people. And, you know, I'm very grateful for that. Very grateful to Jack and Miles and Anna and Sophie and Daniel and all the people over there. So, yeah, because I met you through that. I met a lot of good people through that. It's a good fucking crowd of people on that who like that show, you know. So
definitely a positive, good side of the internet, like just all positivity.
Oh yeah, there is some. Yeah, I mean, I'm talking to you. I would never have known you before, you know. My friend Samantha. Like, there's connections like all over the place, you know. So it's like fun, you know. Yeah, and like I'm C. I guess that's how she pronounces her name. I've never said it out loud before. CIE, you know, she's in Denmark. You know, I would never have. Now I'm like kind of friends. If I ever meet C, I would imagine I would give her a hug. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she's amazing.
And I've never met her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, that is fun. Yeah, that is some fun stuff. All right. Well, thank you very much, Kevin, and talk to you soon.
Thank you, and you have yourself a wonderful day, and RIP Tom T. Hall, and peace out.